There's a whisper that follows. He's trying to be the next Obama. And to that I say, no, I'm not trying to be the next Obama. I'm trying to be the first rant. But make no mistake, I stand on the shoulders of the man who showed us that hope is not navavi, that decency is not weakness, and that the power of words can light a fire bigger than any hate that tries to smother it. Trump, you built your empire on division, on walls, bans, and fear. Obama built bridges out of the rubble of cynicism. You told America to look inward, to lock the door. Obama told America to look up, to open the window, to see the world as something we can still make better. And I come from that window. I come from the dream that crossed oceans, from parents who believed that this country could be more than a contest of cruelty. I am not Obama because I refuse to play the same game you think we're in. You want to win headlines, I want to win humanity. You measure success by towers that bear your name. I measure it by families who can afford their rent, by cab drivers who can sleep through the night without fear of losing their medallions, by the teachers who still believe that knowledge is a public good and not a private luxury. You see, when you call me radical, I take that as a compliment, because radicals are the ones who dared to imagine a world before it existed. Abolitionists were radicals. Suffragettes were radicals. Obama in 2008, when he told a nation tired of war and worry that, yes, we can, was called radical too. And now, when I stand here, a Muslim son of immigrants, the new mayor of New York City, I carry that same radical faith, that we can, that we must, and that we will. Trump, I am not here to outtalk you. I am here to outlove you. Because love, real political love, is the most dangerous weapon we have. It's the kind of love that refuses to give up on the people you've ignored, the workers you've underpaid, the neighbors you've turned against each other. It's the love that refuses to believe that cruelty is strength. It's the love that tells the billionaire and the bus driver they belong to the same story. So listen, Trump, I'm not Obama. I'm Zohran Mamdani. I don't just speak of hope, I organize it. I don't wait for the powerful to hand over justice. I build it brick by brick, borough by borough. And when history looks back, it won't remember your walls or your tweets. It will remember the people who believed, as Obama did, and as I still do, that our best days are not behind us, but just beyond our fear. They said the odds were impossible, that no one with my name, my face, my story could ever stand before the people of this city and say, I am here to lead you. They said politics had no room for the son of immigrants, for the man who prayed in a mosque and grew up in the rhythm of 2 languages. But what they never understood is that my story is not just mine. It's the story of this city itself. The story of New York is not about who had power, but who demanded it when they were told they couldn't have it. It's the story of the cab driver who wakes before dawn to keep the city alive, of the nurse who works double shifts so someone else's child can breathe easier, of the student who studies by candlelight because their rent is higher than their hope. And I am here to tell you that there is power in those stories. Power that cannot be measured by the size of your bank account, but by the size of your courage. Power that does not live in marble towers or golden penthouses, but in the hearts of people who refuse to give up on one another. That is the power I believe in. The power that built the city brick by brick, dream by dream. Too often, we are told that politics is about spectacle, about the loudest voice, the sharpest insult, the richest donor. But I learned early that real politics, the kind that changes lives, doesn't happen on television stages or in gilded ballrooms. It happens on the sidewalks of Queens, in laundromats in the Bronx, in the churches and mosques and temples where people gather not because they agree on everything, but because they believe in each other. It happens every time someone says, this isn't fair, but I'm going to fight anyway. We live in a world that tells us to be quiet. That tells us to be grateful for what little we have. But I want you to know that gratitude and ambition can live together. You can thank the world for what it has given you and still demand that it give more to those who have less. That's not anger. It's compassion turned into action. It's the realization that your struggle and someone else's are not separate stories, but chapters in the same book. When I walk through New York, I see classrooms filled with brilliance waiting for opportunity. I see elders who gave their lives to this city and deserve dignity, not neglect. I see single parents doing the work of 2, and I see children who still believe that tomorrow can be better than today. That belief is not foolish. That belief is sacred. It is the flame we must protect from the winds of cynicism that blow through our politics every day. We must teach our children that leadership is not inherited. It is earned through service. We must remind our elders that their voices are not relics of the past, but instruments of the present. We must remind ourselves that this city, for all its noise and chaos, still belongs to the people who keep it alive, those who sweep its streets, drive its buses, deliver its food, and teach its future. There are those who tell us that to dream of equality is to be naive, but what is more naive? Believing that the world can be fair, or believing that injustice will fix itself if we simply look away. I have seen too much struggle to surrender to cynicism. I have seen too much resilience to believe that despair is our destiny. Every immigrant who arrived here with nothing but a suitcase and a prayer is proof that hope is a muscle. And when we use it, it grows stronger. Let me tell you something about power. Real power is not about domination. It's about connection. It's about listening before speaking, understanding before judging. Real power is when a government worker feels as valued as a CEO, when a teacher feels as celebrated as a tech founder, when a nurse is paid not as a cost, but as a cornerstone of society. Real power is when a child from the projects can walk into City Hall and see someone who looks like them, speaks like them, and fights for them. We must unlearn the lessons of fear that have been taught to us. Fear tells us that resources are scarce. Fear tells us that justice for someone else means less for us. But that is the greatest lie of all. Justice is not a pie that runs out when someone else takes a slice. Justice multiplies when it is shared. Fairness expands when it is practiced. And love for our neighbors, our workers, our city, is the one currency that only grows in circulation. I stand before you not to promise perfection, but to prove possibility. That no matter where you come from, you have the right to stand tall in your own story. That the measure of our city's greatness will not be its skyline, but the strength of the people who built it. That no amount of hate can erase the truth that when ordinary people come together for something extraordinary, nothing can stop them. So tonight, I ask you not for your applause, but for your attention. Not for your faith in me, but for your faith in each other. Because the greatest lesson I have learned in this journey is that power does not belong to the few who hoard it. It belongs to the many who claim it. And when we claim it with courage, with compassion, and with conviction, we don't just change who leads the city. We change what leadership means. Power has always been a mirror reflecting what we choose to see in ourselves. For too long, we have been told that it belongs to the loudest voice in the room, the richest man in the boardroom, the person who commands attention through fear rather than respect. But that is not power. That is performance. Real power lives in the quiet corners of courage. It lives in the mother who refuses to let her child go hungry, in the worker who stands up to unfair wages, in the student who challenges a system designed to overlook them. Power, real power, is not about control. It's about care. And that is the lesson this city needs to remember. When we talk about leadership, we are not talking about ruling. We are talking about serving. True leadership begins not with the desire to be heard, but with the willingness to listen. It is the art of understanding that people do not need saviors. They need solidarity. The strength of a city like ours is not in its skyscrapers, but in its people. It is not in the number of billionaires it produces, but in the number of children who believe their dreams are still possible. There is a myth that compassion makes us weak. That to lead with empathy is to lose the edge required to make difficult decisions. But that is the lie that keeps humanity out of politics. Compassion does not cloud our judgment. It sharpens it. It reminds us that the point of power is not to preserve itself, but to distribute it. It tells us that the measure of a society is not how well it treats the privileged, but how fiercely it protects the vulnerable. Look around you. This city was not built by the indifferent. It was built by the dreamers, the hustlers, the strivers, the ones who turned small chances into big changes, the ones who came here with nothing but the belief that if they worked hard, they could build a better life. Yet today, many of those same people are being priced out of the very neighborhoods they built, silenced in the very democracy they defended, and blamed for problems they did not create. And that, my friends, is not progress. It's betrayal. We cannot call a city great when it forgets the greatness of its people. So let us redefine what it means to lead. Let us say that leadership is not about ego. It's about equity. Not about domination, but about distribution. Not about lifting a few to the top, but lifting all so no one is left behind. Leadership must be the hand that builds, not the fist that breaks. It must be rooted in the belief that progress is only real when it is shared. We have spent too long confusing wealth with wisdom, too long believing that the ability to buy means the right to decide. The richest man in the room is not the one who has the most money. It is the one who creates opportunity for the most people. The most powerful person in a city is not the one whose name is on the tallest building, but the one whose work allows others to stand taller. That is the truth of justice. That is the power of purpose. We must learn to measure success differently, not by how high our GDP climbs, but by how low our poverty falls. Not by how much profit a corporation makes, but by how much dignity a worker keeps. Success is not when the stock market rises. It is when a family no longer has to choose between rent and dinner. It is when an immigrant no longer fears a knock on the door. It is when a teacher can afford to live in the city where they teach. Success is not luxury. Success is liberation. And education, true education, is the foundation of that liberation. It is not merely about textbooks and tests. It is about teaching our children that they are inheritors of possibility. It is about teaching them to see beyond the walls built around them. A city that invests in its schools invests in its soul. Every dollar we spend on education is a declaration that we believe in our children's future more than our fears of the present. Because if we do not teach them to lead with love, someone else will teach them to rule with fear. Let us also talk about what it means to be bold. Boldness is not recklessness. It is responsibility. It is the courage to act when others wait for permission. It is standing up not because it is safe, but because it is right. Every great change in this country, from civil rights to women's suffrage to marriage equality, was led by people who refused to wait for someone else to do what they knew had to be done. We owe it to them, and to those who come after us, to carry that torch forward. And in this moment, when cynicism is fashionable and apathy is easy, I am asking you to believe again. Believe that the city can be fair. Believe that politics can be honest. Believe that leadership can be humble, because belief is the first step toward building. The moment we stop believing, the foundation begins to crack. But when we believe, truly believe, that we are stronger together, no system of greed, no politics of hate, no rhetoric of fear can divide us. This city has survived every storm thrown its way because its people never forgot how to stand together. We must remember that now. Leadership is not a crown, it is a calling. And when we answer with courage, compassion, and conviction, we don't just rebuild a city, we reimagine it. Every generation inherits both the dreams and the debts of the one before it. The dreams to continue, the debts to confront. We inherit the unfinished work of justice, the echoes of promises that were made but never kept. And when we step into the light of leadership, the question that faces us is not whether we will follow tradition, but whether we will transform it, whether we will continue to build systems that serve the few, or finally create structures that serve the many. That is the choice of our time, the test of our courage, the measure of our humanity. There is a rhythm to progress, a beat that begins in the streets long before it is heard in the halls of power. You can hear it in the chants of workers demanding fair pay, in the prayers whispered by families who refuse to give up on each other, in the quiet defiance of young people who believe that their lives should count for more than someone's bottom line. That rhythm is the heartbeat of democracy. And every time we choose compassion over cruelty, we keep that heart alive. For too long, we have allowed politics to become theater. We have been taught to treat leadership like a show full of noise, distraction, and applause. But cities do not thrive on performance. They thrive on principle. Progress is not measured by who can shout the loudest, but by who can listen the longest. It's not about dazzling speeches or clever slogans. It's about doing the unglamorous, difficult work of making sure no one is left behind. That work does not make headlines, but it makes history. When I walk through the neighborhoods of this city, I see resilience everywhere. In the shopkeeper who opens her doors after a flood, in the delivery worker who pedals through rain and snow to keep others fed, in the student who studies after a night shift, refusing to let exhaustion silence ambition. These are the builders of the city's moral foundation. And yet too often, their labor is invisible, their stories untold. That is the tragedy of inequality, that those who hold society together are treated as if they are disposable. But I am here to tell you they are indispensable. They are the authors of the next chapter of justice. We must begin to reimagine what power looks like. Power should not intimidate. It should illuminate. It should be the light that reveals the humanity in every face, not the shadow that hides the pain of those forgotten. The purpose of leadership is not to sit atop a pyramid of privilege, but to turn it upside down so that those at the bottom are finally lifted up. This is not charity, it is justice. And justice is not a favor we give, it is a right we recognize. To those who say that empathy has no place in government, I say empathy is the only thing that has ever moved this world forward. Every movement that has expanded freedom began with someone imagining what it felt like to be in someone else's shoes. The abolitionist who refused to accept slavery, the worker who organized a union, the teacher who refused to segregate a classroom, all were guided by empathy. And empathy, when married to action, becomes the most revolutionary force there is. We must teach our children that greatness does not come from rising above others, but from lifting others with us. That the truest measure of success is not how much we accumulate, but how much we contribute. This is the education we need, one that goes beyond numbers and grades, one that teaches humility alongside ambition. A society that forgets to teach compassion produces wealth without wisdom, power without purpose. And a city that loses its compassion loses its soul. But compassion alone is not enough. It must be organized. It must be strategic. It must be bold. Because the systems that perpetuate inequality are not accidents. They are designs. And if injustice is designed, then justice must be designed too. We must redesign our housing policies so that no family has to choose between rent and food. We must redesign our education system so that opportunity is not a privilege, but a guarantee. We must redesign our economy so that it values human dignity more than corporate dividends. Each of us has a role to play in this redesign. You don't need a title to have influence. You don't need wealth to create change. Every act of courage, whether it's a protest, a vote, a conversation at your kitchen table, is a brick in the foundation of a fairer world. You are the builders of that foundation. You are the guardians of that vision. The world we seek will not be handed to us. It will be built by us. And building is hard. It requires patience, resilience, and faith. Faith that the cracks in our society can be repaired. Faith that the light of justice can reach even the darkest corners. Faith that the idea of equality is not namavi but necessary. That faith is not blind optimism. It is disciplined hope. The kind that works with its sleeves rolled up. So let us keep building. Let us build a city where fairness is not just a word in speeches, but a reality in every neighborhood. Let us build a nation where equality is not a dream deferred, but a promise delivered. Let us build a world where every person, regardless of name, color, or origin, is seen, heard, and valued. Because when we build that world together, we do not just change politics, we redefine what it means to be human. Change does not come from comfort, it comes from confrontation, not of people, but of systems. The moment we begin to believe that injustice is inevitable is the moment we hand away our power. But I have seen enough courage in this city to know that inevitability is an illusion. Every right we enjoy today, the right to vote, to organize, to love freely, to breathe clean air, exists because ordinary people refused to accept what they were told was impossible. That same fire still burns in us, waiting to be called upon, waiting to remind us that progress does not depend on permission. It depends on persistence. When you walk through the city, you can feel the contradictions of our time pressing against each other. On one block, towers scrape the sky. On the next, families crowd into shelters. You can see abundance and absence standing side by side, as if the city cannot decide what story it wants to tell. But here is the truth: both stories belong to us, and we cannot heal what we refuse to acknowledge. To move forward, we must stop hiding poverty behind statistics and start seeing it as the moral emergency that it is. Because the strength of a city is not measured by the height of its skyline, but by the depth of its compassion. This city belongs to the worker as much as it does to the entrepreneur, to the renter as much as the landlord, to the immigrant as much as the native born. It belongs to the dreamer who cleans offices at midnight, and to the teacher who wakes before dawn to shape the minds of tomorrow. When we forget that, we forget ourselves. We must remember that the story of progress is written not in boardrooms, but in break rooms, not in press releases, but in protest songs. It is written by those who build, cook, clean, teach, drive, heal, and hold the city together. They are not footnotes to our progress, they are its authors. There is something profoundly radical about ordinary people deciding that they deserve better, because that decision to demand fairness, to reject despair, is the foundation of every movement for justice. And yet society often tells us to wait, to be patient, to let the system work itself out. But history shows us that justice delayed is justice denied. The same voices that tell us to slow down are often the ones who benefit most from our stillness. So we must keep moving. We must refuse to wait for permission to claim what should already be ours: dignity, opportunity, equality. But let us also be clear, progress is not about punishment, it is about partnership. The goal is not to replace one hierarchy with another, but to dismantle the very idea that power must be hoarded at all. True progress is collective. It recognizes that our destinies are bound together, that your freedom and mine are intertwined. When a worker earns fair wages, the economy grows stronger for everyone. When a student has access to education, innovation expands for all. When a family has housing stability, the entire community becomes safer. Justice is not a zero-sum game. It is the only sum that multiplies by being shared. We need to redefine wealth, not as a number in a bank account, but as the well-being of our neighbors. Wealth is clean air, safe streets, good schools, and time with our families. It is a home that shelters you without suffocating you under debt. It is knowing that your child's future will not be decided by your zip code. That is real prosperity. the kind that cannot be measured in profits, but in peace of mind. We must also teach that the purpose of power is not dominance but service. Leadership is not about standing above others, but standing with them. The strongest societies are built not by those who compete for power, but by those who share it. The day we stop believing that collective action can change the world is the day injustice wins. But as long as even one person still believes and acts, injustice can only tremble. Education must be our greatest tool in this struggle. Not just education that fills our minds, but education that shapes our hearts. We must teach young people not only how to succeed, but why success matters. Success without service is hollow. Ambition without empathy is dangerous. The world does not need more conquerors. It needs more collaborators, more builders, more believers. Every classroom, every community center, every public library is a seedbed of democracy. The more we invest in minds, the less we will have to spend on mending what neglect destroys. And yet, for education to matter, it must connect to dignity. A diploma is not liberation if it leads only to debt. A job is not justice if it demands your exhaustion for someone else's comfort. Dignity means the right to rest, to be seen, to be heard. It means policies that protect workers, not exploit them, that value mothers, not marginalize them, that uplift youth, not burden them with despair. The truth is, we already have the resources to make this city fair. What we need is the will. The will to say that poverty is not a natural condition. It is a political choice. The will to understand that homelessness is not a failure of individuals, but a failure of systems. The will to believe that progress does not happen when we accept what is, but when we insist on what should be. And so we must insist. Insist that fairness is not a favor. Insist that justice is not optional. Insist that compassion is not weakness, but wisdom. Because a society that invests in care builds resilience, and a city that learns to love its people learns to last. The day we understand that, we will no longer ask whether equality is possible. We will simply begin living as though it always was. There comes a point in every society when the question is no longer whether change is needed, but whether we are brave enough to make it real. The test of leadership is not how loudly we can promise transformation, but how deeply we are willing to believe in the goodness of the people we serve. Because belief, when practiced through action, is the most powerful force known to humanity. It is belief that has carried every generation through its darkest hours. It is belief that turns struggle into movement and movement into history. The world tells us that power belongs to those who shout the loudest, but we know better. Real power is quiet, deliberate, disciplined. It is the mother who rises before dawn to make sure her children have a future brighter than her own. It is the young organizer who spends sleepless nights planning, knowing that every petition signed, every meeting held is a small stone in the cathedral of justice being built one brick at a time. It is the teacher who still believes that a lesson can change a life, even when no one is watching. That is where real power lies, not in palaces or stock exchanges, but in the humble acts of people who refuse to give up on each other. We must begin to tell the truth about what kind of leadership the world needs. It does not need rulers, it needs listeners. It does not need perfection, it needs purpose. The role of a leader is not to command applause, but to amplify the voices that have been silenced for too long. Leadership is not a crown to be worn, but a burden to be carried. And when carried with compassion, it can transform not just laws, but lives. Our challenge is to replace the politics of fear with the politics of faith, not blind faith in institutions, but in each other. Faith that the cab driver and the college student, the nurse and the street vendor, the artist and the engineer all share the same destiny. Faith that community is not an illusion, but a commitment. Faith that love, the simplest, most radical force, can do what no policy ever could: make us feel seen, valued, and human. But love in this sense is not soft. It is fierce. It is the kind of love that refuses to look away when injustice stands before it. It is the kind that pushes us to organize, to vote, to speak out, even when it feels like no one is listening. Love is the energy that fuels courage. It reminds us that dignity should not be distributed by wealth, race, or background. It belongs equally to all. When people say that politics should be pragmatic, I agree. But let us redefine pragmatism. Pragmatism is not the acceptance of inequality. It is the strategy of justice. It is the recognition that compassion must be organized, that good intentions must become good institutions. Pragmatism is building systems that make fairness automatic, not exceptional. And that requires imagination, the ability to see beyond what is to what could be. Imagination, paired with discipline, is what turns protest into policy. We cannot allow cynicism to become our language. It is too easy to say that nothing changes, that the system is too broken, that people are too divided. But every generation before us has faced the same despair and still found the strength to push forward. the abolitionists, the suffragettes, the civil rights organizers. They were told it was impossible. Yet they marched, they bled, they built, and they won. The legacy they left us is not just freedom. It is the reminder that hopelessness is the luxury of the comfortable. The rest of us must hope like our lives depend on it, because they do. Hope is not passive. It is not sitting back and waiting for better days. Hope is work. Hope is study. Hope is struggle. It is the labor of building something that you may never fully see completed, but choose to build anyway, because you believe in those who will come after you. Hope is the bridge between generations, the whisper that says, "We did not give up, so you must not either." Let us also speak of unity, not the hollow kind that asks people to forget their pain, but the honest kind that asks us to face it together. True unity is not uniformity. It is the ability to stand in difference without losing sight of our shared destiny. It is forged not by ignoring injustice, but by confronting it side by side. A society that confuses silence with peace will never know freedom. Real peace demands that we face the truth, even when it shakes us. And when we speak of truth, let us remember that it is not a weapon, but a window. Truth allows light to enter the places fear has kept in darkness. It allows healing where denial has taken root. Truth tells the child in the Bronx that their dream matters as much as anyone's in Manhattan. It tells the immigrant worker that their hands are worthy of rest and respect. It tells the forgotten, you are seen, you belong, you matter. If we can carry that message forward through our policies, our classrooms, our workplaces, and our streets, then we will have built something more lasting than any monument. We will have built a culture of belonging, a city that believes not in power for its own sake, but in power for the sake of people. So yes, let others debate what is realistic. We will build what is right. Let others measure success by profit margins. We will measure it by how many people can sleep without fear, eat without worry, dream without apology. Because justice is not a dream for tomorrow. It is the work of today, done together, done with love, done without fear.